Today you will learn how to make those 3D viral reels in the style of Houston Kold. This video will be a complete breakdown of the edit you just seen, and at the end of the video I'm going to show you guys a way to make those 3D viral reels faster. And also all of the assets that I'm going to use in this video will be in the link of the description. It's a huge asset pack that contains 16,000 assets. So with that out of the way, we're going to start by placing our assets inside of our After Effects composition. So I'm simply going to browse into my asset file, and I'm simply going to import a background right there. So as you can see, our background has been imported and it's animated as well. Those assets are really cool. You should really download them. It's totally free, by the way. So I'll create a new text. Right click on the layer panel, click on new, now click on text, simply click on it. Now you can write whatever you want to write. And now what I'm going to do is simply pre-comp my text by clicking on Ctrl-Shift-C. This will make our task easier in the future. Alright, now in this pre-composition I'm going to simply animate the text. So we're going to create a text animation, but before that I'll make the text a lot more prettier. So I'll right click on the text, go on layer style, and then I'll pick my color gradient. Now I'm simply going to open the gradient setting, and I'm simply going to tweak it until I like the result that it gives me. Okay, now I'm satisfied with my gradient. What I'm going to do is simply change the text because I feel like it. Now what you're going to do is simply click on animation, and you're going to click on position. Now simply click on add, then click on property. Now you're going to have to select opacity. Now what you're going to do is simply put the opacity down to 0, pull the y-axis down a little bit like that. Now you're going to select offset, and you're going to create a keyframe at the first frame. Now just go a few frames forwards and put the offset at 100%. This is going to give you a smooth animation like that. And to make it a little bit more smoother, you can select them all and click on F9. And as you can see, it's a smooth animation. But I'm not satisfied, so I'm going to pull out the graph editor, and I'm simply going to create a custom graph, which I like better. Now I want to create another text with the same animation. So we're not going to redo everything. Just duplicate the old text that you did and just change the text, right? So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to place it right under it. I'm going to change the scale a bit, and I'll probably delay it like that. Okay, now I'm simply going to change the text. As you can see, it's changed and we kept the animation. But I'm going to put it in another composition, so copy it, then delete it, then create a new solid, Ctrl Y. Then you can simply pre-comp it, delete the solid, and I'm going to put back my text by clicking on Ctrl C. And as you can see now, the two texts are separated, so now we can control the depth of each of the text separately. And this is really going to come handy while we're going to create our 3D animation. So now what I'm going to do is simply import the rest of my assets into my After Effects project. So I'm simply going to speed this part of the video up a bit. But as you can see, the asset file has a lot of things you can choose from. It's actually incredible and totally free. And by the way, if you're new to the channel, don't hesitate to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I post a lot of After Effects content like these, and I also noticed that a lot of people that were watching my content were not actually subscribed. So subscribe if you like this type of content. Now that I placed all of my assets into my After Effects project, and now I'm simply going to fuse the hand and the logo together by pre-comping them together. This is simply to recreate this thing right there. But now what we're going to do is simply create our 3D camera. So right click on the layer panel, go on new, and then go on 3D camera. Convert all of your layers into 3D by simply clicking on that. Now you're simply going to click on one view and simply going to click on two view. If you don't have this view right there, you're simply going to click on top, I believe. Then you're going to click on custom view 1. And it's going to give you something similar to this. Now we're going to select the background and we're going to push it all the way back like this. And you're simply going to click on S, and you're going to have to scale it up so it can fill up the frame. And now if you didn't notice, this step is the step where we're going to place all of your layers into the 3D space. It can take a bit of time, but it's worth it, right? So I'm just pushing my layers forward or backwards to my camera, depending on where I want the elements to be. So if it's too close like that to the camera, I'm just going to scale it down like that. Okay, I think this is perfect. So yeah, just place your layers on how you want them to be. Now I'm simply going to select my 3D camera, and I'm going to push it towards the letters because this is where the animation will start, right? And like I said earlier, you can control the depth of each of the separated texts. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. I'm gonna select my first text and I'm gonna push it back like that. And as you can see, this simple change added a lot of depth. Now we're gonna simply do the 3D animation, which is controlling the 3D camera. So make sure to add a keyframe at the first frame of your composition. I just need to place it right like that. Now I'm simply gonna replace the keyframe like that. Okay, now if you want to create an animation, just go a few frames forwards in your animation and simply move the 3D camera. Now you can experiment with the movements to see if you like them or not. And I like this movement a lot. And what I want to do now is simply select my text right there, and I'm simply going to rotate it like this to make it look cooler. Now I'll go back to animating my 3D camera, so I'll select it and I'm simply going to change the position of it. So I'm simply going to push it, and if I play it back, it's going to give us a clean zoom out animation. And I'm simply going to select one of my assets and I'm going to put it right in front of the camera so it can be visible when it's at this distance. So now let's just play it back and see how it looks. Now in this section of the video, I'm simply going to experiment with the different movements that I can make with the 3D camera. And I'm simply going to move my camera to the right so it can catch the subject. So I'll simply keep playing around with these keyframes until I got a result that I really like. So I'm simply going to stretch them out, and I still don't like it, so I think I'm going to simply get rid of this second keyframe right there. And what if we play it back? Yeah, I like it a lot better, but we don't see the text anymore, which is unfortunate. So I'm simply going to find a way to make the text visible in the first frame. So I think I will simply select my text and move them a little bit to the right. So I'm simply going to take this text right there. I'm going to move it like that. And I'll do the same for the other text. So I'll simply select it. Okay. And then I'm simply going to move it. As simple as that. Now if we play it back, our text is there. And now our subject is also there. You can still polish it, to make it a little bit more visible. And I think I'll put it a little bit bigger by changing the scale. And now let's see how it plays. Yeah, definitely, it's a lot better. Now I'm simply gonna add a third keyframe to continue the animation, and this will be the part where the end brings the After Effects logo to the scene. So I'm simply gonna put it right there. So I think I'll just scale it up. Okay, now this is perfect. I'm simply making sure that the position is right. Now what I'm going to do is simply go into the pre-composition, and I'm simply going to fix this mess. So I'll make the end a little bit smaller, and I'll push it down like that on the y-axis. So I'll just bring it down and make sure it's in the middle. Now I'm simply going to scale this logo all the way down, and I'll simply try to put it inside of the end, make sure it fit in. Now I'm simply going to try my best to center them. And I think this is enough. So I'm going to go back to my main composition, and I'm simply going to scale it back up like this so it can look a little bit more dominant. And now if we go back a little, you can see that the camera is literally going straight at it. So click on P to plot the position values, make a new keyframe, and put the y-axis all the way down. And once the camera gets a little bit further, you can put it all the way up like that. And this is literally how you can create the animation. So it's as simple as that. So I'm just gonna move some keyframes around to make my animations in sync, and I'll simply click on F9 on the keyframes of the end to make the animation a lot more smoother. And as you can see, we're actually getting somewhere. We're getting something pretty decent. So now I'll simply come back to the composition of the head, and I'm gonna push it down like that so it can let go of the logo. And you already know the drill. Select the keyframes, click on F9 to make them smoother. Now you can go back to your main composition and see how it looks. And it looks pretty clean. But now if we play the animation back, you can notice something. The background is actually cropping out. So what you can do is simply select your background, go in the FX panel and search for Rapid Tile. You're going to apply it to the background. Click on that and click on Unfold and simply fix your background. I've been thinking about adding some depth of field, so I'm simply going to double click on my 3D camera I'm gonna select depth of field, and I'm simply gonna play around with my settings, and I'll click on OK once I'm happy with the result. Just a little disclaimer, the settings of the depth of field can really depend from a scene to another, so I can't really give you a specific setting to use because it might not give you the same result as it did to me. Once you're happy with your depth of field, click on OK. And now what we're gonna do is simply scale our background back up again. And I'm simply gonna make sure that the end is not cropping out, so I'm simply gonna put it down. Okay, I'm gonna put it down on the y-axis, and I'm simply gonna scale it up like that, so it can be in the middle. That's perfect. Now let's play it back and see how it looks. It looks pretty good to me, but the Houston Kold PNG is really cropping out, and it's not really good to look at. So I'm simply gonna scale him up to where we don't see any cropping. Now what I'm gonna do is simply prepare the transition for the second scene. So I'll add a fourth keyframe, which is where the camera will pan to the right. So as you may notice, it looks really bad, but we're gonna fix it. But first, let's polish some elements in those scenes right there. So I'd like to scale the text right there a little bit more. And once again, I'll try to scale up Houston Kold so we don't have any cropping problem anymore. Okay, I think this is enough. Okay, yeah, I like that a lot. Now let's do the transition. Let's change the scene. So what you're gonna do is simply create a new solid. You're gonna convert it into 3D so it can match in the scene, and you're gonna simply put it right behind the After Effects logo. So you can control it on the second view and simply pull it forward like that. And once you're happy with the positioning, what you can do is simply scale it up all the way. Now I'm simply gonna do some adjustments to make it look a little bit more clean and centered into the scene. Now what I'm gonna do is simply click on T to pull out the opacity value, and then I'm gonna put it at 0, and I'll simply search for a frame that I want it to actually start appearing. So I'm gonna add a keyframe right there. I'm gonna go a few frames forward like that, and I'm gonna put the keyframe value of the opacity at 100%. So you know the drill. To make the keyframe a little bit smoother, select them all, click on the F9, and and it's actually how you make the transition from a background to another. It's really simple. Now I'm just trying to polish it a little bit so it can come in an area that really makes sense with the timing. And now if we play it all the way through, as you can see, it's cropping. So what you can do is simply continue to scale it up simply by stretching it like that. Now I'll simply try to go backwards to see if there's any revisions that I need to make, and I think I'm good. So now what I'm going to do is simply try to create a line. So I'll simply make a shape layer that has the same color of the After Effects logo. I'm going to make a rectangle like that. Now what I'm going to do is simply pick this tool right there to move the anchor point of the rectangle. I'm simply going to move it at the start of the shape. Now we can turn the shape into 3D so it can fit into the whole 3D scene, and I'm simply gonna put it right where the After Effects logo is. Okay, now this is done, I'm gonna put the anchor point a little bit more precisely in the middle. And now to make sure that the rectangle doesn't appear from nowhere, what you're gonna do is simply click on the chain of the scale value, and you're gonna put this value of the scale down. Okay, you're gonna put this down, and as you can see, it really shrinks the rectangle. And to make it grow back, you're simply gonna go a few frames forward like that and simply put this value all the way up like this. And as you can see, the rectangle is growing like it comes straight from the After Effects logo. And as you can see, we can still see a tiny bit of the square right there. So I'm simply gonna put this value down at 0 so we can see anything at all. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Simply click on F9 to get the keyframes a little bit smoother on the rectangle and tweak them a bit to have a better pacing. And now if we play everything back, it gives us something like this, and we're getting somewhere. I'm simply gonna change the position of the 3D camera again. I'll select my last keyframe and I'm gonna put it a little bit more to the right. This will make sure that the animation gets a lot faster. So I'm simply gonna perfectionate my keyframes and tweak them a little bit. I'm simply gonna move them around in my timeline to see what fits the best. Just make sure that the shape keep up. So I'll just stretch it again like that, and also make my background a lot bigger. I'm talking about my white background, so it doesn't crop to a black screen. So now I'll simply look at my scene and see if there's some imperfection that I can fix. Now that we're all good, what I'm gonna do is simply select my rectangle shape and I'm simply gonna enlarge it. So I'm gonna go there, and once I'm there, I'm simply gonna scale it up on a y-axis like that. And it's gonna give the illusion that the camera is going straight into the purple thing. Now I can play it back to see the result of everything. And I personally like the result very much. So now the next step that I'm gonna do is simply trim this composition. So I'm gonna go there, click on Ctrl A to select everything, and I'll cut everything right there and delete the rest. So with that, we're gonna pre-comp everything, and I just have to make sure that the white part there is not visible anymore. So I'm just gonna go a few frames forward, and I'm just gonna stretch it like that. Okay, now this is perfect. What I'm gonna do is get out of this composition, and we're actually gonna create the second scene, which is the scene where I will use the second technique of using a 3D camera, which is the best technique in my opinion. It will save you so much time, and I'll show you this technique in a second. So as you may notice, I trimmed the composition right there. Now what I'm gonna do is simply create a new solid with the same color of this purple right there. I'm gonna pre-comp it, and then what I'm gonna do is simply show you the new way of controlling a 3D camera. So I'm gonna make a very simple scene right there. I'm gonna create a text, and I'm simply gonna try to center it like that. I'm gonna scale it up so it can be a little bit more dominant. Now what I'm gonna do is simply import some of my asset, which is an Instagram logo, and I want it to turn into a white logo. So I'm simply gonna add an invert effect on it. So I'll just search it right there and apply it. Now that's cool. Now I'm simply gonna add a drop shadow to my text so it can add a little bit more spice to it. Now I'll simply tweak a little bit of the settings of the drop shadow. That I'm happy with this result right there. Now what I'm going to do is simply select the Instagram logo and simply duplicate it into my composition. Okay, so I'll just place them all around the composition randomly. As you can see, I'm also playing with the rotation so it can have a little bit of variation. Once I'm finished with positioning my things in my scene, I'm simply going to use the plugin called 3D Pro to create a whole 3D scene with the power of one click. So just click on that right there, then click on Scale Background, and then what you can do is simply play around with the camera clicks. It really was that easy. This plugin saved me so much time. And if you want to use it, the link of it will be in the description. And if you want to edit fast and still maintain the high quality of your 3D videos, you know what to do. This is literally the best 3D camera plugin I know. And now what I have to do is simply tweak around with the objects inside of my scene. I can rotate them, push them a little bit forward, and I can do whatever I want since the heavy lifting has been done by the plugin. So now I can focus more on the details, So now I'm just making sure that everything looks perfect and polished. So I'm just gonna move these Instagram logo around a little bit everywhere in my scene to see which composition looks the best. And once I'm happy with the placements, all I can do now is simply select the 3D camera right there, and I'll simply create an animation. So I'll add 2 keyframes, and the second keyframe will be the keyframe where I will zoom in into the text, and this will create a cool zoom animation. I'm just gonna make a graph like that, customize it, and then simply play it to see how it looks. Now I'm gonna play it back fully, and I like the result. So what I'm gonna do is simply go back to the main composition and put the second scene a little bit after the first scene. So now what I'm gonna do is simply pull out the opacity settings by clicking on T, and I'll simply add a keyframe at the beginning, and I'll add another one a little bit further. Now the first keyframe, I'm gonna put it at 0, and as you can see, it's doing a little blend transition. And the only problem is that the background is black. So what you can do is simply stretch the first scene a little bit, and as you can see, we don't have this problem no more. I'm just gonna adjust something in the second scene. I'm simply gonna make sure that the text is centered. So I'm just gonna put the camera up a bit. So I'm gonna go to the second keyframe and pull it up, and I think it looks way better now. So I'll just go back to the main composition and see how the transition is looking, and I think it looks pretty good and seamless. So I'm just gonna play it back to see how it looks, and to be honest, it looks good, but there's some things missing. So I'm gonna go into the first scene, I'm gonna select the camera, and I'm gonna click on R, and I'm gonna alt click on the orientation, and I'm simply gonna put a wiggle expression to add some shake. The edit will be way more dynamic, and it will simply look better. So if the background is cropping out a little bit, you can simply fix it by simply changing the value of your repeatile effect, and the problem is fixed. And I'll do the same for the hand right there, because it's cropping out a little bit at the bottom. So I'm simply gonna give it a repeatile effect. So I'm gonna select it, search for the repeatile effect right there. I'm gonna apply it and simply put it at unfold and only touch the bottom value. Now that it is fixed, we can see the rest of the scene, and as you can see, the shake really adds something different to the scene. Now I'm gonna do the same for the second scene. I'm simply gonna go into it, and with the plugin, I can simply click on one single button right there, and it will literally give me some automatic shakes. I can also change the value of those shakes just by selecting the nulls right there. I'll select one of them, and as you can see, I can change the frequency, the speed multiplier, and much more. So I think I'm happy with the results, so I'm just gonna play it back to see how it looks. Oh, and also don't forget to add motion blur to every layers in your 3D scenes, so simply do that. Now we're gonna add some post-processing effects and some overlays into the whole edit. It's gonna look better, trust me. So you can pre-comp everything, and I'm simply gonna pull out my assets folder, and I'm simply gonna drag and drop some overlays that I like. So I'll simply speed up this part because it's just me throwing some light leaks into this edit. So yeah. And now I'm done with putting all of my overlays, so let's see how it looks. And it looks really good. So what I'm gonna do is simply pre-comp everything again. And I'm simply gonna go into the main composition and add a chromatic aberration effect to it. And by the way, it's a plugin, it's not in the base After Effects, but it's totally free. The link will be in the description. And I'm simply gonna tweak the lens distortion and the color glitch like this, so it can make a little trippy effect that I like. Now what I'm gonna do is simply add a glow from Production Crate. The glow is free. The link will also be in the description. So I'll go on script and add the glow right there. Click on generate. Now as you can see, I can change the glow settings right there, and I'm simply gonna adjust the glow's intensity with keyframes, because on the edit there's a part where there's a lot of white background, and if I don't adjust the intensity, we're not gonna see anything. So I'm just gonna put it down when the white background comes in. So now I can simply select all the keyframes, click on F9 to make it smoother, and the glow is basically perfect. I like it a lot. The plugin is free also, so why not use it? Now I'm gonna play my whole animation back and see how it looks. And yeah, it's perfect. I like it like that. I think we really did something with this one. So as you may notice, recreating the style wasn't complicated at all. And if you want to get more videos on how to master those crazy editing style, I got this video right there that will 100% help you and make your editing skills a lot better. Yeah, thanks for watching.